Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And those of you who are driving in your pickup on the highway right this minute listening to us, when you get home tonight, bring up the YouTube channel, Cam and Otis Show, subscribe, step one. Step two, as you're watching us and you see this guy standing between us. Actually, he's sitting, but this guy sitting between us. Click that like button. You don't have to like him, but you have to like us, and that's what makes it great, and that's what makes the show fun and informational. And as we're getting into the information, and I do my normal diatribe about wandering around the desert and doing those sort of things. Camden, what's going on in the desert this week?
This week, rugby is officially picked up. We got UNM last week. Had our freshmen out there, beat up on them pretty good, and yeah, we're looking good. Got a lot of depth this year. We're excited, and it is finally cooling down. Triple digits coming again this weekend, but we got down to 61 last night, so I'm happy.
Bust out the big puffy coats, man.
Oh yeah, it's chili and soup season. I gotta say that props on the intro. I don't know, we've been off for about a week, and you wrote a full comedy sketch getting in there. Come on.
Oh, I did. Just going with the flow, being my authentic self. And speaking of authenticity, we got my good buddy and damn near next door neighbor up where we live. We'll call it.
That's right.
We'll call it near next door neighbor, Jon Macaskill. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, Otis. Thanks for having me, Cam. Great to be here with you.
Man, I'm excited for this because you dove into full brunt because I sat in on one of your sessions. What were we doing? Buffalo leadership.
Oh yeah,
that was like 2 months ago.
2 months ago.
Crap.
Yeah.
Dang. Infamous time flies. And I remember seeing this picture of you sitting by a fountain, not a water fountain, not a drinking fountain, but a water pretty fountain sound, and meditating. That
right.
Mindfulness. What was the catalyst that smacked you upside the head? That said, hey, big tough Navy SEAL guy, you need some of this woo-woo stuff.
Yeah, man. So I was involved in an operation in 2005 that went sideways. Lost a lot of guys. I was not on the battlefield, which in a way almost made it worse because I wanted to be on the battlefield to help. And I struggled after that operation with survivor's guilt and imposter syndrome, moral injury, depression, anxiety. And I carried that with me for a while, and I self-medicated with alcohol and prescription medications. And finally, I got to a very dark spot, and I sought some counseling. And I'd done counseling in the past, and it had helped. But this one counselor sat across the table from me. He's like, hey, I want you to try mindfulness and meditation. And I laughed at him because just like you mentioned,
by the way, I've laughed at that same statement many a time myself.
Right. Yeah. Cause I thought it was just like you mentioned, kind of woo woo. And so I was like, doc, man, I've got some serious issues going on. I need some medication, not this hippy dippy meditation stuff. He's like, well, what if I had a pill that I could give to you that could help your performance personally and professionally, mentally and physically? And as a special operator and a type A personality, we're always looking for an edge, right? I mean, I remember back in the teams, we were always looking for an edge, looking for taking this supplement or that supplement to help us run faster, lift heavier, whatever. And so we're always looking for an edge, whether it's over the enemy on the battlefield or our buddy right next to us. So I was like, yeah,
Doc, it's all about I'm finishing this race run before you do.
Exactly. Yeah, it's almost more about beating the buddy right next to you than the enemy on the battlefield. So he's like, well, it's not a pill. I want you to try meditating. So I got into it. Long story short, it took me about 2 months. There were some highs and lows, definitely some frustrations, some parts when I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I thought it was, hippy dippy woo woo. And then after about 2 or 3 months, I started to feel a change in myself, but I thought maybe it was just me seeing that. And then I had a guy come up to me at work. He's like, hey, Jon, what are you on? Like, what, as in, what are you taking?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, all right, well, this is an opportunity for me to share that I'm meditating, or lie about it and tell them that I'm taking some new supplement. But I just kind of took a leap of faith, and I told him that I was meditating. And then he asked me more. I expected him to kind of turn around and walk away and never talk to me again. He's like, oh, really? Tell me more about that. And so I told him, and then we started meditating together, and he started to feel a little bit better. And I was like, oh, maybe there is something to this. So I think mindfulness and meditation, the two together, helped me to live a happier, healthier, more fulfilled life, change my life for the better, but quite literally also save my life. So I feel it's a duty and an obligation to pay it forward, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
Could you talk a little bit, we've been kind of joking about the woo-woo side of it. Could you talk about actually squaring those two? Because what I mean by that is, it's one thing to be like, okay, I meditated some, I saw this difference in my performance, those kind of things. Some people take that and they jump off the deep end, and it's, they get into the manifestation, all these kind of things, vision boards and all that kind of stuff. How did you square those and get to the pragmatic point where it's like, okay, hey, these things work. These things are helping my life. I'm not going all full off the deep end. I'm still I'm still the tough guy. I'm still the Navy SEAL.
Yeah, no, and that pragmatic side, that's probably, I think, what kept me from getting into it in the first place. Was I'm very, I have a degree in mathematics and a master's degree in operations research, so I need to see the figures, the numbers, right? Otis, aren't you an ORSA guy too?
Yeah, I was going to say, give me the spreadsheet, man.
Yeah, exactly right. I need to see that. So once I started to feel the difference, and I sat back down with that same doc, and I started to feel better. And I was like, hey, all right, tell me what's going on. Like, physiologically, I need to know. And so he explained it to me, the science behind it, and we can get into that if you want to. But there is physiological changes that are happening in your brain when you meditate, and as you do it over time, those changes last longer and are more profound. But I haven't been able to see any data on vision boards and some of those other things, right? The what is it? The secret, or I mean, I understand positive thinking. I do. And I promote being optimistic when it makes sense, but there's also times to be like, okay, you know what? This is going to take more than a vision board. This is going to take me, putting on, lacing up my shoes, getting up in the morning and doing the work to achieve what's on that vision board. I'm not just going to put it on that vision board and it's just going to magically happen. So, if some of your listeners have vision boards, I'm not opposed to the vision boards or things like them, but they don't just magically happen. You have to put in the work. Well, and that comes back to meditation and mindfulness. You can't just sit there in silence and think that things are magically going to get better. You have to sit and actually meditate. You can't sit in silence and let your mind wander all over the place. Basically what we do all day anyway. You have to try to focus it. And as you do that, that's where the magic happens. So yeah, I think the pragmatic side of me just never lost touch. I've always been looking at the numbers and figures. I track my heart rate. I track my heart rate variability and how that changes when I meditate. I'm like, okay, yeah, there is some science to it. So yeah, I just never got wrapped up in anything outside of the physiological side of things. I'm sure there are other things happening, but that's not where my work is.
Yeah. Well, I'm sitting there. I was trying to let you. Well, I did let you finish, but boy, I didn't want to because I had my smart ass coming.
Oh, come on, bring it.
So your vision board went from that new pistol and rifle to a field of flowers, right?
I still have a new pistol on my vision board.
I was going to say, there's two sides to the board.
I always have a new pistol on my vision board.
That's awesome. I'll share with you. And for me, meditation, what I told myself in order to get myself to do it was I'm training my brain the same way I train for, used to train for running, but training for those other things, the physicality, the muscles, you got to put in the work, do this, do the reps, put in the reps sort of thing. And I told myself that's that's what that meditation does, is I'm training my brain to focus on that one thing.
That's right.
As opposed to, it's not just sitting quiet. And I think
Yeah.
that's, elaborate on that some for us, please.
Yeah. I mean, there's benefit to sitting in the quiet and letting your mind roam. There's benefit to that. But what I've found is what helps me the most is a guided or unguided meditation where I am focused on an anchor. And what I mean by anchor is that's something that brings you back, because your mind is inevitably going to wander off to some other place. And much like, I'm going to use a Navy term here, that anchor, right? Don't hit me too hard with that.
What's that?
Right, that anchor keeps a ship in place. Well, that anchor that we're using in a meditation keeps us coming back to the breath, a body scan, a mantra, whatever your anchor is. When your mind wanders off, again, inevitably that's going to happen. When your mind wanders off and you're like, oh yeah, I'm in a meditation, let me come back to my breath. Let me come back to that mantra. Let me come back to that body scan. When you do that, there's I think you may know her, Otis, Janelle McCauley. She's a Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, or retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. She talks about that being the mental push-up. And I think that's a great way of thinking about it, is each time that happens, rather than beating yourself up, because that's what happens a lot when people's mind wanders off during a meditation. They're like, crap, my mind wandered off again. And then they get frustrated, and then they tell themselves that they can't do it. But if you convince yourself that's actually where the magic happens, that's that mental push-up, that's when you're getting your reps and sets in. That's when you start to become more focused and be able to become more focused in other parts of your life. That's worth the time sitting and focusing on that anchor. And it may seem like you're wasting time, like 10, 15 minutes of focusing on your breath. It may seem like, well, what did I just do there? Well, it's just like if you go into the gym and you work out for an hour. When you look in the mirror in the gym, you're like, oh yeah, I got that blood flowing through my biceps. I'm feeling good about myself.
Look at
as
him
soon as you walk,
guns.
right? And then you walk out to the parking lot and you're like, wait, what happened? But then you continue to do it over 2-3 months, then you start to see those effects. Well, same thing, man. It's like the brain is a muscle. It's not, but it's like it is. As you continue to work it, you're going to cut off and do some neural pruning, cut out those neural pathways that aren't worth your time and energy and thoughts. And you're going to develop new neural pathways that are more beneficial to you. And that can be done through the focusing on an anchor over and over and over.
I love the performance perspective that it always comes back to, even with the working out comparison. It makes me think a lot of, you see cross training in all sorts of different sports. I remember starting yoga for me helped me so much in rugby because I got balance for the first time in my life, and just like those little things like that. And Dad, you'll help me out with this. I know there's a football player who did ballet. Is it Herschel Walker? Did I get that right? Okay,
I think Herschel,
yeah. All right,
yeah.
But it's like you have these ways that you can learn to help to apply it, and it's like if you can see the specific area that you're applying it, like balance for me in rugby or whatever it was, you can apply it in that way, and it helps you to move forward with that mechanism. Could you talk a little bit more about like the pathways that you were just saying and the focus and what that really means, as far as like how that helps to build that repetition for when you're not meditating, for when you're just going through life?
Yeah. So we have this in our brains. We have this adaptability in our brains called neuroplasticity. And I think I may have shown a video on this, Otis, at the Buffalo Leadership Conference. I can't remember if I did or not. But there's a great video that displays what neuroplasticity is. And it's this guy, it's a video series called Smarter Every Day on YouTube. And he's an engineer. Excuse me, guys. I got a little bit of a cold. So this engineer, he has some buddies of his that are welders and work in the same shop. And they're like, hey, we're going to play a trick on him. We're going to re-engineer a bike to where when you turn the handlebars left, the wheel goes right and vice versa. And when you see it on the video, it kind of bends your brain. You're like, that's not how the bike's supposed to work. And so like he's grown up riding a bike, right? We all have. And that's why the expression is just like riding a bike, right? You can get on a bike, not having ridden a bike in 25 years, but that neural pathway is there. You know how to do it. But he gets on this reverse bike, and the neural pathway on how to ride a bike regularly is there, and he cannot ride this backwards bike. And he takes it up. He gets really frustrated, and I think he takes 8 months riding it in his driveway, and he finally figures out how to do it. Meanwhile, his little boy, who's like 6 years old, does the same thing, and he picks it up in 2 weeks. Because when you're younger, you have much more neuroplasticity. I'm going somewhere with this story, but just trust me. So it takes 8 months. Meanwhile, he hasn't been riding a regular bike this whole time. And then he goes to Amsterdam, where there's more bikes than there are people. And he puts out like a tweet saying, hey, come see if I can ride a bike. And this guy brings him a bike, a regular bike, and he cannot ride it because he's redesignated that path for how to ride a bike. He eventually picks it up after about 20 minutes or so because it's still there, but it's just been redesignated. So what happens in mindfulness and meditation is we may have these neural pathways that convince us that we are bad people, that we're not worth a damn, that we're imposters. And as you meditate, you can have this neuroplasticity increased. So you can gain that ability to change your thoughts. Now, the change of the thought might not happen in the meditation, but you would change the ability, or rather give yourself the ability to change the way that you think. And so you meditate, develop this new neuroplasticity, and then you can catch yourself when you think these negative thoughts and actually change the neural pathway to start thinking differently. Because that's how our brain is wired. We can think negative thoughts. It's actually beneficial to us in the long run to think negative thoughts. It's called the negativity bias. It's what keeps us alive, right? That's why, like, when we walk around a corner and we assume that there's a bad guy around that corner, but there's nobody there, that's not a problem. But if we go around the corner and we assume that there's no bad guy and there is, then that's a problem. But the problem is that we assume the worst about everything, and that's causing a lot of stress and anxiety. It's causing us to think negative thoughts about ourselves and causing us depression and stress. And so, man, I'm rambling on here, but the bottom line is that the brain and the way that we think can be changed, and that's through the neural pruning and the neural pathways and neuroplasticity. That can all be improved through meditation.
All right, the Orsapod. What's an MOE that you've developed? Those of you who don't know, we're
measure of effectiveness.
Orsa code here, measure of effectiveness.
Thank you.
To see that you are improving in that neuroplasticity.
Yeah. I haven't sat down and thought about that, but that's a great question. Let me see. So I would say, the ability to learn, right? That's one of the reasons learning a language when you're younger is so much easier. The ability to recall facts, figures, events, memories, the ability to recall that, the speed and the depth of the memory can be improved. So I think those are good measures of effectiveness there. I will tell you, before I was meditating, even in the SEAL teams, like, I could stand up in front of my 16-man platoon and talk to them, but standing up in front of a whole room of people, I hated it. And I was like, okay, 5 minutes, that's like the max I'll stand up. But now that's what I do for a living. I speak in front of a group, hundreds, sometimes maybe even 1,000 people at a time. And I can stand up there confidently, knowing that I have the information in my brain to do this talk. I don't think if I had not found mindfulness and meditation, I don't think I would have been able to do that. The other thing I believe is the presence. So meditation is so coming back to more Orsa stuff, Venn diagrams, right? Meditation is in one circle of the Venn diagram, and mindfulness is in the other circle of the Venn diagram. And meditation is the formal practice. Mindfulness is a way of being, and being present in the moment. As you meditate, you can become more mindful. As you're more mindful, meditating becomes easier. But I will say one of the other measures of effectiveness that there's certainly no data on, but is how present I am with my family, how present I am with my friends, how present I am in a conversation, right? Like right now, right here with you. I'm present. I'm not thinking about what's next. I'm not thinking about like how to answer that question. I'm listening to the question, right? So much of what we do in our conversations, we only listen to half of it because you hear the first part of a sentence and we're like, okay, how do I answer that? So we're listening to respond rather than listening to actually be a part of the conversation. So I think that presence is another MOE for the effectiveness of the mindfulness and the meditation together.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Evergood Adventure Wine.
Our loyal listeners know Evergood's founder, Matthew Hexter, and our good friend. From his appearances on the show, they have never disappointed. And Evergood Adventure Wines doesn't disappoint either.
No, it doesn't. Evergood is a craft winery from Colorado that makes wine from lemons, not grapes.
That's right. Picture this, adult lemonade.
Oh yeah, perfect for your next backyard barbecue or hanging out with friends at the beach or the pool. No need to drink a warm red grape wine when it's 100 degrees out or much hotter here in Tucson. Evergood over ice is the perfect refreshment for a hot summer day.
And they come in a variety of flavors, including lemon, strawberry, lime, my favorite for margaritas, grapefruit, and watermelon, which comes in a cool pouch, by the way. These non-carbonated wines check all the boxes. Gluten-free, vegan, low sugar, and low in sulfites. Best of all, they taste damn good, and they have fun names too.
Yeah, like their OG lemon wine called Skierpy. Yeah, y'all heard that one right, Skierpy. And I'll tell you, Skierpy is also one of my favorites.
Evergood now ships to 41 states, so you can order your lemon wines online at evergoodadventurewines.com.
Plus, Matthew is being kind enough to offer 20% off for all of our listeners. Just use promo code CAM-OTIS at checkout to get 20% off and start enjoying these amazing lemon wines.
So y'all go to evergoodadventurewines.com or click the link in the description in the show. Click Buy Now to redeem your Cam and Otis Show exclusive discount. I want to jump back to the pill metaphor.
Yeah.
Because, generally speaking, I mean, I've taken several pills in my life, still do. I get results within a matter of minutes to an hour, right?
Sure.
With that pill. With meditation, you don't. How and I think this is really an important piece to share with our audience is how do you get to that point where you're starting to see it? Because if we all stopped right now and we did a 10-minute meditation, folks driving the pickup truck down the highway, please don't do this. But if we all did that in this moment, and then we said, all right, I meditated, I'm all better. It doesn't happen that way.
No, it doesn't.
How did you bridge that to where, you continued down that path?
Well, this doc promised me that it would work, one. So I kind of took him at his word. The other, like, he introduced it to me. So coming back to that story that I shared at the beginning, a piece that I left out, after he told me that I wanted, or that I should meditate, I thought, okay, you know what? I'm a type A personality. I'm this badass. I'm going to go and I'm going to crush this hour-long meditation. And I sat down for like 10 seconds, focusing on my breath. And then, another 10 seconds went by. And now I'm thinking about changing the oil on my truck and paying my taxes and picking up the dog mess in the yard. And it was on everything except this meditation. So now I'm pissed off. And I go back to this doc. I'm like, hey man, that meditation stuff, it didn't work for me. What else you got? He's like, well, what did you do? And I told him what I just told you. And he's like, well, that's like lining up at the starting line of a marathon without ever having run a step before. That's like going into the weight room without ever having lifted weights before and trying to get under 350 pounds on the bench press. And so now he's kind of speaking my language. I'm like, well, doc, what should I do? And he introduced me to something that you probably did on the shooting range and I did on the shooting range and before going in the kill house. And we did some box breathing, which was breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and do that 4 or 5 times. And that allows you to settle your breathing, allows you to settle your heart rate. So I did it and I was like, oh yeah, doc, I've done this before. So I started to do that over and over and over. And I started to see the effects lasting longer than just the first few minutes after that. And then once I started doing that, then I was able to get into more in-depth meditations, longer duration meditations. And I started to see the effects lasting through the day. Like when somebody cut me off in traffic, I was like, you know what, whatever, that guy, go on. Prior to that, I'd be like, jerk, flipping him off, trying to chase him down,
I'll
road
teach you a
rage.
lesson.
Yeah, exactly. But now I just kind of let that roll off my back and go on about my day. So I think those were ways that I noticed the changes in myself. They weren't huge changes, but they were enough for me to notice. And then over time, the duration of those changes lasted longer and longer. And then I was like, okay, there's something there.
I think there's something really interesting with the removal of the negativity as the goal versus necessarily creating something positive. Kind of gets into like the headwind tailwind bias. As soon as that wind stops blowing in your face, you forget how hard it was 5 seconds ago when that wind was in your face. Could you talk a little bit about either for you, with some examples, or in the coaching side of it, of what it looks like to continue to build those habits once the negativity is gone? Once you get rid of that that negative mental thought that jumps in all the time, when it's not there, you don't notice that it's not there because you're not noticing it anymore. Could you talk a little bit about how you find those ways to keep working on it?
Yeah. I mean, one, it's my job, so that makes it easy. Right? I want to make sure I'm practicing what I preach. But two, it's like supplements, right? Mm-hmm. You take these supplements, you start to feel better, and you're like, maybe it's not the supplements. Maybe I'm just feeling better, and then you stop taking the supplements. So I've had times where I've been meditating, right, for months, years at a time, and then I'll drop off, and I'm like, oh, I'm starting to get angry again. I'm starting to get short-tempered. I'm not present with my family, my kids. I'm constantly on my phone, or I'm constantly thinking about the next day. And it's knowing that the negative sides are going to come back. Mm-hmm. I think that's one motivation. But then the positive sides, the fact that I can be the father that I am, the high performer. This is going to sound very arrogant, but I like to think of myself as a high performer still. I mean, I may not be wearing the uniform, but I think I carried some of what I learned in the teams into what I'm doing now. And I'm a high performer at work, and I'm benefiting both from the negative sides being gone and the ability to focus at work. I'm more productive. I get into that state of flow more often. And when I get into that state of flow, at the end of the day, I'm like, hell yeah, I crushed today. I feel good, right? I'm sure you guys both felt that. But the days that I'm not focused, and the days maybe I missed a meditation, sometimes I'll be like, I was scatterbrained as all get out today, and I didn't get through what I needed to get through, and now I'm going to go home and I need to meditate during the drive. For those who are driving their trucks right now down the road, you can do driving meditations, obviously keeping your eyes open, but just being focused, like turn off the radio, turn off the show that you're listening to, unless it's the Otis and Cam show. I mean, keep that one going, right? Or my show. I run a podcast too. If you're listening to that one, listen to that one, but otherwise turn it off and focus on the sound of the wheels rolling on the road. Focus on the sensation of the steering wheel in your hand. Focus on the sensation of the seat against your back, and the vibration of the car rolling down the road. That can bring you into that present moment and make you more present when you get home with your family, with your loved ones. So yeah, I think one, it definitely has to do with the fact that it's my job. Two, it has to do with the negativity and the wanting that negativity out of my life. But then the positive sides are just innumerable and well worth the time and energy spent meditating. And I will talk to people and they're like, hey man, I don't have time to meditate. Well, I always feel that you get more out of life and you get time back when you meditate, right? You're more focused, you're more in the moment, you're better able to get through what it is you need to get through for the day. So if you say that you don't have time to meditate, then I think you need to find time to meditate, and you'll find the time that you have is that much better and that much more productive.
There's your reward right there.
Yeah.
There's a layer of nuance that I've caught. When you talked about what meditation isn't, and letting your mind wander, and you also said quickly, well, that is also good to spend time on. Could you talk a little bit about
Sure.
that piece of being present? That piece of mindfulness as far as being present. I feel like a fundamental piece of being able to be present here is that I let my mind wander in other situations, so I don't need to do it.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that?
Oh yeah, no, that's a great point. Stephen Kotler. I don't know if you guys know who Stephen Kotler is. He's an author, wrote Stealing Fire and numerous other books. Stealing Fire is, yeah. Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Love Kotler. But he talks about how he meditates, and he does meditate by letting his mind wander. And that allows him to tap into his creativity. So the motivation behind a meditation like that is different. The motivation with letting your mind wander allows you to tap into maybe some creative solutions. Like, I'm sure, again, all of us have probably woke up in the middle of the night, and now because it's dead silent and you're laying there in your bed and there's nothing else to do, you suddenly start solving all the world's problems in your mind. Like coming up with new creative ways to be an entrepreneur, coming up with new things to create, but whatever. I think that is valuable in maybe figuring out problems that you've had for days, weeks, months. And maybe, like you said, Cam, those times where your mind does wander, in that time does allow you to be more focused in other times when you don't want to be solving all the world's problems when you're on a podcast, right? You want to be focused in the moment. So because you've allowed your mind to do that at another time, then you can be more present. I don't know the science behind that, but it sounds legit. Hey, it's science, right?
We'll just put the science stamp on that.
Yeah.
And call it that way. I mean,
it sounds
but
legit.
I'll agree with you. It's the mind continuing to solve problems when you're not thinking about the problem. You go for a walk, you're in the shower, like you said, and you wake up in the middle of the
subconscious.
night. Yeah, the subconscious continues to work.
Yeah,
it's churning, it's chirping in the background, and saying those things and working on that ORSA spreadsheet, optimizing the freight car going from Ohio to New Orleans and how it's going to take that railroad.
That's right.
I'm gonna have a nightmare on that now. I think there's a great point also, and too many people get wrapped around the axle of sitting in cross-leg Indian style, with the knees, feet put up on their knees and all twisted, and the Om thing of meditation. There's different styles and different ways, and I think that's a huge lesson I think you could share with just right there. Of it's not that picture of the woo-woo kaleidoscope thing for everybody.
Right. And maybe, I'm glad you said that, for everyone, because for some it is. But for me, I don't get in that position. I cannot get in that position, right? I just don't have the flexibility anymore. My podcast co-host, he can do it. He's a yoga instructor and he can do it. Hey, more power to him. But I sit in a chair. I have a meditation chair that I sit in, and I meditate. After lunch, I meditate in this very chair. I meditate in my office after lunch. And then you can also do walking meditations. That can be literally just going on a walk in nature and focusing on the trees and the leaves, the sound of the wind through the leaves. That can be a meditation, but you can also literally do a walking meditation in your office. That could be like 10 feet, but you're taking, 10 minutes to walk those 10 feet. And each single step, you're noticing the physical sensations of the rolling of your feet. You're noticing the physical sensations of the bending of your knees and the movement of your hips, and noticing all that. That can be a meditation. So there are tons of different types of meditations. There's also tons of, as far as physical side to the meditation, but there's also the transcendental meditation where you're focusing on a mantra, breath work, which is just like it sounds. You're doing different types of exercises with your breath, mindfulness meditation, which you're focusing on the here and now, body scan meditations. There's tons of different meditations that are out there as far as what it is you're doing physically, and then what it is you're doing in your mind as well at the same time. So yeah, it's not a, hey, you have to be sitting in this position, you have to be doing this particular type of meditation and at all. And I encourage, and even as far as apps, right? People are like, well, how do I get started? There's tons of apps out there, and I recommend people try them all and figure out what works for them, because some might like one app, some might like the other, some might like a men's voice, some might like a woman's voice guiding them. It's kind of, shooter's choice. Figure out what it is that's going to land with you, and what's going to get you to stick to it, because that's the key, is consistency. Just like the gym, what's going to get you to get in the gym every day? What's going to get you to sit down and meditate for 10 or 15 minutes a day? And when I say 10 or 15 minutes, that doesn't even have to be 10 or 15 minutes straight. It could be 10 1-minute box breaths. It could be 15-minute 1-minute box breaths, but just do it. Do those mindful minutes, and that can change you as well.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose.
Are you tired of dealing with the cost of bad leadership? It's time to make a change.
The Green Beret Leadership Program is your key to unlocking the full potential of your team.
By using GBLP to develop leaders in your business, you'll get a proactive and responsible team that embraces challenges, takes calculated risks, and takes action without constant supervision.
Developing great leaders can take a lot of time and energy, and that's why businesses tend to opt for the trial by fire and the school of hard knocks path to leadership. The truth is that wastes time and money. And folks, there's never enough of either one of those, and puts lots of extra stress on your leadership team.
Oh yeah, and that stress has lots of bad outcomes for your team. Poor leadership drives away your quality talent, and the longer you wait to fix the problem, the more talent you're going to lose and the more money you're going to lose.
With the Green Beret Leadership Program, you can use battle-tested leadership principles of the Green Berets to develop great leaders in your team faster than with the School of Hard Knocks. You'll see changes in just a few short weeks.
And the longer you wait to take action, the more damage poor leadership can do and will do to your business.
Learn more about the impact of GBLP, that's the Green Beret Leadership Program, can have on your business, and schedule your free coaching call with the Green Beret coach. That's me, folks, Otis. Now at findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP. I'll say it again, findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP, or you can click the link in the description below.
Y'all, don't leave your team to struggle alone on their own. If you're not giving them the tools they need to be great, then they're not going to be great. You can't expect them to. So give them the tools they need to be successful.
No, I wanted to throw that thought to Camden. It was something we worked on in rugby when I was coaching the boys at high school, and how to set your mind prior to a scrum, set your mind prior to a kick, that set piece to change, to go from, like you said, take those box breaths, before you step into the room, before you squeeze the trigger, those sort of things, and thinking in that same sort of sense, even on the pitch in a match when things are going on.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. There's lots of little things. I think, just to your point, John, it's about finding those moments for you. Like, one thing that I think of, and this is a little bit tactical also for delaying what I was doing inside the lineout, but every lineout I walked up to as a jumper, I'd stop and fix my socks. It's a little bit so I could delay myself and mess up the other team's timing, but it's also because it gives me a moment to take a deep breath, pick up my socks, and analyze what's going on. I know that we had a scrum half daddy. You got him throwing grass, rubbing grass between his hands, I think it was, before every scrum, before you put the ball in. Any little thing like that you can find to help center yourself on the task, I think, is a really important thing. And I think you could apply that, in any aspect, before I get on a podcast, whatever it is, those box breaths, whatever your mechanism for it is, if you do those little things every time, then it puts you back in, I guess you'd say, being present, but my thought is more so puts you back to training, to where it's like, right. You talk about scrum stat before every scrum. If you take a deep breath, I would close my eyes before every scrum. It puts me right back onto the pitch at practice. And then it's like, if it's to practice, I know what to do. I know exactly what position to get in. And then when you put yourself in that, it removes all the stress of the current situation, which, I guess, John, I'll throw this over to you. I guess I would say that's just being present in the moment at that point.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. That in a sense is your anchor, right? Mm-hmm. Like I talked about in a meditation, the breath can be your anchor, or the mantra, or whatever. well, maybe for you heading into that scrum and pulling up your socks, that's your anchor to get you back into the present moment. Maybe the guy, rubbing the grass between his hands is his, his anchor. For baseball, a pitcher comes off the mound and may grab the sock and, get some dust on his hand or some powder or whatever. That might be their, yeah, sure, it might help them physically, but it might also get them mentally back in the game. No pun intended. So yeah, there's definitely anchors that are out there everywhere we look, and we just have to be aware of them. And once we identify them and figure out what works for us, keep using them to bring us back. So sometimes my kids are my anchors, right? Sometimes I can go home and my mind will be wandering off and my kids will bring me back real quick, either by, saying something really cute or the opposites, doing something that pisses me off. That can be my anchor. Yeah, exactly.
Could you talk some about finding that anchor, or just really identifying what's right for you? Because I think it's Marcus Aurelius who said this, but it's that, like lying to yourself is like the easiest of all deceptions and the most dangerous, because you can lure yourself into these situations. Like talking about, like, in the sports analogy, it's really different to have a nervous tick before you do something and having something that gets your mind straight before you work, right? But you could easily go, oh no, coach, I do this. I fix my hair before every scrum. It's like, okay, is that actually helping you focus, or are you just in your head so much that you're doing this all the time? Like, there's a really big difference there, and that's a big pitfall, I would guess, for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'd imagine, like, if you're a poker player and you've got your tell, right, that's probably not a great thing. You probably maybe want to vary your anchors a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to be experimentation with time, and you figure out, again, what's going to work for you. And why it works. Maybe the understanding, again, coming back to that pragmatic side. So why is bending over and pulling up your socks going to help you out? Well, because it's something you do every single time you go to the scrum. And it's something that you've figured out works for you when you're on the pitch and get your mind in the game. So I think it's just time and experimentation, and then understanding why it is that this particular anchor is working for you. And once you figure that out, stick with it, see if it does in fact work. Yeah, I think that's it.
I want to shift gears, because I'd be remiss if we didn't hit this point. How did you go come to the terms of accepting the risk?
Hopefully it's not my side.
Ask shift gears again, Dad. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I just want to shift gears, because I'd be remiss if I didn't hit this point. Because I always love this part of the story is how did you go from secured paycheck while you're in the Navy to, I'm going to start a business and it's going to be about woo-woo stuff?
Well, talking about being remiss, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I'm retired. So there's definitely a nice safety net there, right?
Yes.
I wonder whether I'd be doing the same thing if I'd gotten out after 5 or 10 years and I didn't have that safety net. I don't know. It's a leap of faith with a safety net there. I don't know if I'd be as bold to have taken the same leap of faith without it. That said, I looked at the shiny objects that were out there, commercial real estate, which I'm still interested in, and that's a great line of work. Private equity, venture capital, all these different things, all great lines of work, just not necessarily for me. And I think what brought me into the military was a heart of service, just brings most people into the military. I mean, I know some people come in to get their college paid for and everything else, but ultimately there's a heart of service there. And I think that once I hung up that uniform, or I saw that I was going to be hanging up that uniform, I was like, how can I serve others? How can I positively impact their lives and continue to help them grow? And this was kind of the thing, that the light bulb that went off in my head. I was like, oh, I can do this for a profession. I might not make as much as I would in other professions, but I get paid in other ways, right? I run a podcast and we talk about mindfulness and meditation on there and ways to get involved and ways to improve your life and your leadership. And we get messages all the time about, hey, I needed to hear that very message today. I'll run people through a retreat or a workshop and people will say, hey, that changed my professional life, but it also changed my marriage. I'm like, hey, no amount of money is going to trump that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's the hardest service has allowed me to go forth and take this leap of faith. And again, yeah, I'm retired, so I've got that safety net.
Well, and that is something I do cover with guys that I'm walking through, coaching them through the transition too, is, it's a unique opportunity in your life that not many people, you think about the number of people, the 1% or less that join the military, and then the number of that actually, get a retirement, a pension for the rest of their life that gives them a safety net. Right. It does provide a unique opportunity for guys
sure.
like us to venture out and accept a little bit more risk in life, because we don't have to worry
Absolutely.
about roof over our head and food on the table for the kids.
That's right.
Before you go, Dad, before you wrap us up, actually, there's one other piece I wanted to ask on that, Jon, because, Dad, you and I did, I think it would have been a little bit over 2 years ago, because we did it right before the wedding. We had that whole episode, Dad, talking about accepting gratitude. And I think that was a really interesting conversation. And, Jon, I could hear it a little bit of a very similar thing that, Dad, you and I both have, which is this, like, I want to go help people and all this, and it's like, but then when they say thank you, it's kind of like, doing my job, and you kind of want to move on to the next thing. How have you found that way to still have that sense of service, go help people, but at the same time learning to like actually accept that gratitude? Yeah, well,
it's much like when we were in uniform and people would say, hey, thank you for your service, and there's kind of this awkward figuring out what you say, and I eventually settled on saying, hey, it's my unique honor and privilege to serve, because it was. And not many people, like you said, Otis, it's 1% that get to serve in the uniform, or at least in the military uniform. And now I think it's still a very unique honor and privilege to do what I do now. One, to have the opportunity to do it, like I mentioned before, having that retirement as a safety net, but two, having the people that support me, coming on podcasts like this to help promote what it is I do. I think I have to be thankful for that. And in being thankful, I have to be able to recognize and accept the gratitude. So I'm thankful myself for this opportunity. And when people thank me for it, then it just is paying it forward, I guess, in a way. But I've also found that serving, and then being thanked is also a part of my healing process, my personal healing from what I've been exposed to. Paying it forward in this way is an opportunity for me to heal myself, right? It feels good to know that there's a purpose for me to be here, right? This operation that I was involved in 2005, I lost a lot of guys and they're not here. And I feel kind of like at the end of Saving Private Ryan, when Tom Hanks is on the bridge and he grabs Private Ryan and he says, earn this. Well, nobody ever said that to me, but I feel that I have to earn my being here. And by paying it forward and helping other people live their positive lives or improve their lives positively, that's me paying it forward and me earning my being here. And then by them thanking me, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you're thanking me, but you're also thanking the guys that gave me this opportunity. So I think that's a way for me to accept that gratitude.
Awesome. Well, and in that sense of being gracious and learning and paying it forward, I'm looking back at neuroplasticity, and that was a great reminder of that the shifting of our mindset when we're meditating is something that can help us rewire into a more positive mindset. And it's not just about sitting quiet and woo-wooing. There's some stuff going on up there that the scientists are still trying to figure out.
That's right.
Camden, how about you? What you learned? Oh, sorry, Jon, go ahead.
No, they always will be. They'll always be figuring out. new things about the mind, man.
That's right.
I heard somebody said this.
Cam?
I don't know if this is a guest we had, Dad, but something along the lines of science will chase reality, because it's like you're living it all the time. To measure it and actually get the really accurate stuff on it, that takes a lot of work, takes a lot of time. So you're always going to be that step behind. But no, for me, I think really kind of same vein, Dad. But talking about the different types of meditation, I think but a lot like you, John, I boil it down to like kind of the pragmatic, like the mechanism of it a lot of time, of what is the mechanism of meditation, because there's so many things that can be meditative. But I've never really made that connection that those are different types of meditation. I kind of, made the distinction of meditation versus meditative actions. And I think that's a really interesting distinction, because then as somebody who finds myself in those different types of actions, now I can build those up just like you would normal meditation practice and, try to get more out of it. Not necessarily get more out of it, but, be better at it, I guess is a better way to put it.
Right.
John, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
Yeah. Well, I learned Cam plays rugby, played. And I learned that there are anchors that are within the sports and within the things that we do every day, right? And those can be grounding anchors that can bring us into the present moment. Something I haven't really thought a whole lot about, but yeah, I learned that.
Yeah, I'll just share with you. Our buddy Scotty Mann told me one that he does before he goes up on stage. Mm-hmm. He goes into the room and he touches the walls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was like, oh man. So I've started doing that.
Ever since he told us that, Dad, I pick grass at every field I go to. I'd rub it on my hands, just like, all right, I don't get to run around anymore, but I get to feel it a little bit.
I love it.
John, how do folks find you? Tell us your podcast, where you're at.
Yeah, so probably the easiest way to find me is just go to jonmacaskill.com. That's JONMACASKILL.com. And that's my website for Frogman Mindfulness, the company that I run. You can also go to frogmanmindfulness.com. It's the same website. You can check out our podcast, Men Talking Mindfulness. That's at mentalkingmindfulness.com and on all the different podcast platforms. And I've just put out a book. It's very, very, very short. It's a 1 hour read, maybe an hour 15. And you can get that if you text the word mindful, MINDFUL, to 33777. So that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Awesome, man. Hey, brother, it is good to see you, man.
You as well.
Our gaps between link ups are starting to shrink.
That's right. So I think is it December 8th that I'm coming over to your place for, was it 10th. Gumbo? December 10th. Yeah. 10th. All right. Gumbo day. I just put that out there for everyone. Come on.
That's all right. That's all right. They're welcome. We always get in that, man. No doubt about it. And this Suzanne she'll be sweating that we said that all night.
I love it.
All right, brother, man. We really appreciate
guys.
Your
thank
time
you.
Today.
Appreciate y'all. Great to be on here, and great episode. Very much enjoyed your guys' candor and humor at the same time. So good stuff.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of the Cam and Otis Show. A special thanks to our guest, Jon Macaskill, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at the Cam and Otis Show. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to share with other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.